This video is an introduction to a new metal casting method. It's similar to sand casting, but we don't use any sand. We cast objects that have been printed in PLA, but it's not lost PLA casting. We make molds out of investment or plaster, but there is no burnout, no kilns, no molten plastic. This is print wave metal casting. The name will make sense later. Let's start with the print. I downloaded Mario Star from Printables. You'll find the link in description. Basically, you split the object in half and you print it together with a box and pins. So it's like sand casting in a way. I actually prefer high-speed PLAs because I think they flow better and they soften better, which will be important. Then we pour the investment directly onto the 3D printer's bed. And of course you have to make sure that the bed is nice and clean so the PLA sticks properly. I always wash it with some soap and then clean it with alcohol. That's why it's called print wave metal casting, because we use printer not only to print the object, but we also print the box and then we pour the investment directly onto the 3D printer's build plate. In other words, the 3D printer plays even a bigger role than in traditional lost PLA casting. But there's one more thing you can do. You can run a G-code to shake out the bubbles. Bubble shaker. This G-code runs for approximately 2 minutes. And in case you're wondering if it actually works, the answer is yes. Of course, don't expect miracles, but it does help. Once the investment has set, just remove it from the build plate. I'm just being extra careful here because I don't want to pull out the part from the mold. It has happened before with some shallow prints. Waves. We'll use waves, that is, microwaves. I'm gonna put it inside of the plastic bag and I'll microwave it on low power. I like to take out the mold and just poke it to see how soft is the plastic. In this case, it needs more microwaving. Now we can just pull out the part from the investment. The thickness of the box is only 0.8 millimeters, so it's easy to cut and you don't waste too much plastic. And we do the same thing with the other mold. And by the way, the plastic bag is not always needed, but sometimes it helps to build the steam. I dried the mold in my air fryer. It is advisable to use a kiln, but if you don't have one, an oven or an air fryer can be enough. You see, burning out molds is not just about getting rid of the wax or PLA. You need to make sure that the mold is dry and it doesn't contain any water. Bringing the mold to higher temperatures can make it stronger and it can decrease the chances of thermal shock. Ideally, you'll want to bring the mold close to metal pouring temperature. But for hobby metal casting, using an air fryer or an oven can work. Sure, the molds might crack because they will not be as hot, but that's just the way it is. So if you have a kiln, use it. And if you don't, there is a way. Just make sure to dry the mold in an oven or an air fryer step by step, slowly increasing the temperature. You need to do it for hours to ensure there's no water left in the mold. Wear a protective equipment, including a face shield, when figuring out your investment. You do not want to pour a molten metal in a wet mold. Was the mold dry before you poured the metal? No. For example, this mold I dried in an air fryer for approximately 2 hours, and then I transferred it to my oven because it can reach higher temperatures. So the total drying time was around 5 hours, and the mold reached 250 degrees Celsius, which is as high as my oven can go. Some investments might need higher temperatures or longer drying times to break away that chemically bound water. So it's all about trial and error. Just remember to stay safe. For melting metal, I use my microwave. If you're new to this channel, I have 2 videos that you might want to watch. Obviously, you can just melt the metal using whatever equipment you might have. In my case, it's the microwave. I'm gonna melt some brass. So we have around 250 grams of brass. I like to preheat it, because that way it's faster to melt it. And some boric acid to help to collect the slag. So now we can just bolt together the mold. I used M8 bolts. And off the camera I also enlarged the pouring hole by carving it out a little bit. I will only use 3 bolts so it's easier to pour the metal. And I'm just checking how bright is the crucible before removing the chamber. It's looking good, so let's open it up and remove the slag. Zinc boiling out from the brass is something I get all the time. There are some imperfections. There's a little dip because the metal shrunk. The sprue needed to be way taller. My sprue making skills are not that great. But you know what is great? Skillshare, the sponsor of today's video. I want to improve my Fusion 360 skills because they're limited. Skillshare is the largest online platform for creative individuals. There are thousands of courses taught by professionals. Whether you want to learn Fusion 360, 3D printing, or other skills, check out Skillshare. I want to take my metal casting to the next level, and in order to do it I need to become better at Fusion 360 so I could design more interesting things and then turn them into metal. I've recently started Fusion 360 complete course. The other thing I want to become better at is using Adobe Premiere Pro. There's so many things I don't know or don't understand. I think it's finally time. It's time to take my video editing skills to the next level with advanced video editing with Adobe Premiere Pro class. First 500 people to use my link in description will get 1 month's free trial of Skillshare. Get started today. But what should I do with this star? Should I make another one? Okay. I made a mistake and it's a new one, at least as far as I'm aware. Somebody gave me these door handles and there's different kinds and they're all brass. At least I thought so. First I melted some scrap brass so I would have more space in the crucible, and then I added the door handle brass on top. When I was cutting the door handle I noticed it was very white. I didn't think much of it because I was working on a balcony and sun was hitting my face. When I opened up the chamber, I witnessed what I can only describe as a zinc party. I poured the metal, but I didn't have enough. It turned out that the bottom brass didn't melt, but the top brass did. I thought it was a failed cast, so I wanted to open it up as soon as possible and inspect it closer. That's another metal melting mistake. Even if you think the cast has failed, do not open the mold early because you never know.
If it wasn't ruined before, now it is. I opened the mold while the metal was still soft.
If I wouldn't open up the mold early, this would be a pretty nice cast. I have no idea what metal it is. And by the way, I did not sand it. This is how it came out from the mold. I told myself that this year I will not waste time on perfection. I think I have demonstrated that the technique works. I might make this star again in future and publish it as a YouTube short. But now let's move on to another example. Let's make a butter knife.
This butter knife I designed in Fusion 360 a while ago. Originally I wanted to cast it in stainless steel. I can melt stainless steel in my microwave, but I'm not sure if I can melt quantities needed to cast a butter knife, so for now we'll do it in brass. This was before I put together the G-code, so I'm just shaking the bed manually. The investment used is only plaster of Paris, dental plaster of Paris. Usually I add sand, but this time I didn't because I, well, wanted to see what will happen. This time I didn't use a plastic bag. It's alive! You can actually keep microwaving your mold to remove even more moisture. There have been times that I microwaved it until it almost felt dry. But don't be fooled, only because the mold feels dry does not mean that there's no moisture in it. And microwaves can also crack the mold, so that's why I only microwave it as long as necessary.
One more thing, if you microwave aggressively on full power, the mold can explode. So low power and step by step.
And by the way, this process can be satisfying. Let's melt some brass. A bit of boric acid, and it's microwave time. The mold has been dried in the oven, but at this point it's cold, so I'll be pouring the metal in a cold mold. I will also pull some vacuum with my vacuum cleaner. Why? Because I want to. I keep the tradition and don't sand my cast to perfection. I just need to get some power tools, I suppose.
Sure, print wave casting has its limits. Just like sand casting, you wouldn't be able to cast this egg cup that I did a while ago. But there are things that you can cast that you wouldn't be able to do with sand casting. In the future video, I'll show you how I made a dice.
It was printed by using supports without any infill, so that way I can just kind of peel it away from the holes.
One of the strengths of this method is ease of use. Imagine browsing the internet at work and you see that there's a file shared by community, printwave metal casting file, and you think, oh yeah, I would like to cast that. So you download it, send it to your printer remotely, because that's what you can do these days. And by the time you get home, all you need to do is pour some investment and do the other steps. It doesn't get much easier than this. Don't you see it? It's simple. I invite the metal melting community to share their creations on printables using the hashtags mentioned before. I'll be the first one. You can download the butter knife from printables and see if printwave metal casting is for you. Ta-ta!